Okay, so here we are live again for another episode of Batman the Animated Series. In case you missed it, I just did an unboxing of this Red Hood figure, and he turned out pretty cool once I put this new head on him. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. And I'll turn on the light for a second so you can get a better look at him. So once I'm done with this, I'm probably gonna do some shots of him and put it on the community post and my Facebook and my Instagram and maybe even do a reel. I don't know. We'll see. But for right now, we're gonna go ahead and watch this episode of Batman the Animated Series, which is entitled Vendetta, and this will be the first appearance of Killer Croc on the series. And Killer Croc is another one that never really appeared in any media at all before his appearance on Batman the Animated Series. And that's kind of understandable in his case because he's one of the newer villains that was featured on the show. He'd only appeared in like the early part of the 1980s. In fact, he appears in the first issue that features Jason Todd, who later on would become the second Robin and the Red Hood. So yeah, he was a villain that was in his initial appearances, he was kind of like Bane before there was a Bane, in that he was a physical match for Batman and also kind of cunning and intelligent, and wanted to take over like just all of the organized crime in Gotham City. But over the years, he got kind of flanderized into being like a complete moron. So there's even an issue of Secret Origins. It's the issue with the origin of the Floronic Man. And since Floronic Man is imprisoned at Arkham Asylum, and so is Killer Croc, he kind of works as like the chief character in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and that he's the one who's actually telling us the story about the Floronic Man, kind of like how Chief was telling the story about Murphy. And in that one, it was established that Killer Croc was quite intelligent, but was playing at being dumb, for his own advantages. So maybe that's how Killer Croc is in this show, when he starts to become kind of stupid later on. It's worth noting the first episode where they depict Croc as being like particularly stupid. It's not really Croc at all. But I don't want to spoil too much about an episode we haven't gotten to yet, in case anybody out there hasn't seen these episodes. And really, you should watch these episodes before you watch these watch-alongs. Like, that's because I'm going to spoil things. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I've been talking for 3 minutes already, and we haven't actually gotten to the actual show yet. All right, so we got the Warner Brothers blimp fading in, or the Warner Brothers shield fading into the police blimp, panning downwards. We got our shifty-eyed gangsters blowing up the bank, and Batman is about to race to the rescue, as he is wont to do. That is a nice-looking Batmobile. It's a little blocky, I think. And here we go again. Batman leaping down in front of our crooks is nice and narrow. No white spot on his upper lip. Shirley Walker's beautiful arrangement of the Danny Elfman theme. Vendetta. Oh, I love the eyes there. Very intense. The late, great Michael Reeves wrote this episode, and it was directed by Frank Power. I'm not sure if that's pronounced Power or Par, but since he directed Batman the Animated Series, I'm going to pronounce it as Power. Oh, yeah. And they're taking Steve Buscemi somewhere. And you notice his name was Conway. Spider Conway. Now, that's important because the comic book writer who created Killer Croc was named Jerry Conway. And if that name sounds familiar to you, I talked about him a bit on the episode Appointment in Crime Alley, which he wrote. He was the creator of Killer Croc and Jason Todd, and another Batman villain called the Black Spider. So Black Spider, Jerry Conway, Spider Conway. Also, he wrote Spider-Man comics. So it might have been a reference to Spider-Man. I don't know. But he was the guy in Spider-Man that most infamously killed off Gwen Stacy. And there's a bomb on the boat that blew up. Yeah. It's almost like someone has a vendetta. Maybe that's why the episode is called Vendetta. Huh. I like the rain ponchos that the policemen have. That's a nice detail. This is a very Bullock-heavy episode, which I like, because you know I like Bullock. Stop dragging the bank. Bullock was another character in the comics that was known for smoking cigars. And in the animated series, they replaced it with a toothpick. They might have shown some of the gangsters smoking cigars or even had the Penguin with a cigarette. But I guess even for a character as just nominally heroic as Bullock, marginally heroic as Bullock, they don't want to show him smoking. But Batman found that toothpick. What kind of shucking jive is this, Jim? You know what I'm going to go through just to get shucking. I like it when he says shucking. We know what he's really saying. Which is why Gordon stood for the monk. If I let you go after Gordon, a lot of ugly ancient history Batman's skulking about. Oh, that's a great shot. Unless you want internal affairs all over you like a bad branch. We've already seen what a jerk the IA guy is in this show. Yeah, back when they used to have to go through actual physical files. I wonder if J. Barr is a reference to J. O. Barr, the writer and artist who created the graphic novel The Crow. Also a big Batman fan. Bullock himself looking for his own farm. Hey, there. Because Batman got it. A real page turner, isn't it? Indeed. Bullock was suspected of accepting Croft and Thorne 2 years ago. Right. The case was dropped for lack of evidence. Now, when Bullock was introduced very briefly in the 1970s, it was just like a little one-page thing where they just needed a detective character. They brought him back in the 80s, and the original storyline for Bullock was he actually was a corrupt cop. He was on the take, and he was working for Mayor Hamilton Hill, who, like I said, in the original comics was a fairly corrupt mayor, not like the more sort of benevolent, but, you know, still sort of self-serving guy we see on this show. But he was basically like hired to be Gordon's second in command and make his life a living hell, which he did to the point where Gordon actually had a heart attack. And at that point, Bullock felt so guilty, he changed his ways and decided to become a good cop. How about that? But yeah, he disappeared from the comics for a while, and they brought him back around the time that they brought him back on Batman the Animated Series. Around the same time that Renee Montoya made her first appearances in the comics. So I'm guessing that's not a coincidence. They probably brought him back because they knew he was going to be in Batman the Animated Series. That's a great shot.
Here's how it works. I have questions, and if you have answers, I'll give you.
Batman lifting fat guys.
Oh,
Uh-oh, all those guys are fat. He's going to lift every single one of them. 38 caliber answers. Oh, that's a good one. Oh.
You were saying?
Well, I hope my mother is doing well.
I was saying.
Probably need to try to give her a call today. I've been wanting to give her a call about some stuff.
It's too hot. Let's get some.
I just seen another Facebook post from a friend talking about how, like, you know, Batman doesn't make jokes. And I was like, dude, Batman the Animated Series. He's like, yeah, well, I mean in the comics. And I'm like, okay, dude. He's a good guy.
Stop! I'll tell you anything you want. Did you order Spider-Conway? Well done. That loser, I wouldn't wipe my shoes on him. Conway said nothing on me. Let him talk. He's gonna talk his head off. No talk.
No.
Just stand there, you.
This is a really good Norrish sort of episode. Lots of good gangster stuff, and it still has a comic book supervillain. And there's Renee Montoya in her slicker.
I've had cats that made more noise than you. About both. I think you might have been responsible for the bomb. You know there was evidence that Conway falsely implicated Bullock at the Graft inquest.
So I think anybody who's watching this knows that.
Even Harmon Light.
Did you get your red head? Oh yeah, actually I did. I had it at the beginning of this video, but I'll show it again for you.
Not a trace.
Pretty cool.
Hold them back in. Have to assume the word.
I'll have some photographs up later so you can see those. And Batman disappeared as mysteriously as he appeared. Some people might try to tell you that Batman should have, like, clomped across the screen for, like, 15 minutes and, like, the loudest boots you've ever heard. But no, he's stealthy. And he just found another clue, which is a scale.
Brought in last night at 6:05. Right. Let me see. Bullet, that you? Yeah. Now let me see. I need to check your authorization.
Unless Bullock all of a sudden has scaly green hands, we know that's not him now. But this is one where, like, I kind of feel like Croc is a bit more authentic to his earlier comic book appearances. There's some intelligence to this scheme. He's not just like this big, stupid thug like he would become later on. Man, I want to go to the Mercury Diner. I bet they have good food. Bullock eats there. They got to have good food. You look at Bullock and you see a guy and think to yourself, that's a guy who knows how to eat. I'm not trying to make a fat joke because, like, I'm on the heavy side myself. But if people see me and they're like, hey, you probably know how to eat. Yeah, I do.
cellular structure is human, but the texture of it is almost reptilian. Oh, it might not be.
Yeah, originally in the comics, Killer Croc was basically just like a big muscular dude with a skin condition, filed his teeth to sharp points. But Croc.
Alfred, you're beautiful. I got around to telling you about that. And as you can see by this recreation of the
But yeah, like along with like the flanderization of his intelligence, he goes to the zoo to research crocodiles. That's a nice little bit. See, kids, this was made before there was the internet. I know that's hard to imagine now. And his bat boat works as a bat sub. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so Batman's having to do research with like paper files and going to the zoo to actually learn about crocodiles. You know the crooks are in trouble when they're actually happy to see Batman. The animation is particularly good on this episode. You know, I'm always giving Kevin Altieri his props. His episodes are particularly good, but props to Frank Power on this episode. He's given Kevin Altieri a run for his money. This is a very well done episode. Croc was one of the characters that was designed by Kevin Nolan. Bruce Timm had brought Kevin Nolan on board. He was a comic book artist, and he was impressed with his style, and had a very sort of like simplified style. Thought it would work really well for animation, and he designed a bunch of characters, and Tim used those as springboards for a lot of these character designs. Like, Batman looks kind of slightly like Nolan's version of Batman, but he kind of took him in his own direction. But Croc is one that 100% is like what Kevin Nolan put to paper. That is absolutely Kevin Nolan's design, and it's a good design, I think, and it manages to convey the comic book character, but in a much more streamlined sort of way. Like, in the comic book, he's a very muscular man who's covered in scales, and that's not going to work in animation because, you know, the anatomy itself is, you know, tricky to animate sometimes. So they got to simplify the anatomy and convey the power of the human body in other ways. And trying to draw a scaly character, keep track of all that stuff in animation, forget about it.
And now it's payback time. Crack Conway and Snail, they can clear the technical. True, but that won't get us Croc. He won't return to his lair now that I know where it is. I'll have to make him come to us.
Also, they went with like a more grayish sort of color, while Croc was usually colored as being green in the comics. Nowadays, they draw him to look more like he's an actual mutant, and he'll have a snout like a crocodile and sometimes a tail. I don't particularly like that. I prefer for him to look more human.
Cry. How do you escape? Simple. The minds don't think about the sewers. No one does.
Oh, his voice is great too.
It was you who set me up the spider and joke. You got it. I wanted you to sweat it out in a cell for a while like I do. To know what it feels like the way I do. You.
Now, I think where they started to draw Croc to look a little more inhuman would have, ironically, I love the way he just kind of gallops there. Actually uses his hands to run a little bit. But one of my favorite comics, Arkham Asylum, which I've discussed on this show before, that one drew Croc to look like I'm talking about, more crocodile-like with the snout and everything. But I didn't really mind it so much in that one because that's a story that's not supposed to be taken so literally. It's supposed, like, the artwork is supposed to have like a dreamlike sort of atmosphere. Like, you look at the way like Batman himself is drawn in that comic.
You let that two-pick up guy, didn't you? And you impersonated Bullock in the jail.
Batman's got it all figured out.
Yeah. And it would have gone down smooth, and you had fun. I'm adaptable. When you grow up like that, you gotta learn to go with the flow. I'll just take care of you first, then Bullock.
But again, you can see how like Croc is written on this. It's I'm not saying he comes across as being like a rocket scientist or anything, but he's obviously written to have like a certain amount of intelligence. What Tywin Lannister would refer to as a certain low cunning, I think. Batman using the infrared goggles, so he's got the red lenses in the cowl. There's a few Croc episodes later on, but I think this is absolutely the best portrayal of the character that's on the show. At least as I recall. I might reevaluate that once we get to those later episodes, but I kind of feel like they nailed it right here. Aaron Kincaid is the voice of Killer Croc. And as I pointed out before, does an excellent job. And there's Bullock. No love lost between these two. And he managed to save / capture Killer Croc. He turns him over to Harvey.
Why'd you stick your neck out like that to help me? Because I thought you were guilty too. That I was wrong. We may have different ways of enforcing the law, but we both believe it. Yeah, come on.
Yeah. He was ready to arrest Batman and decides not to. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about how Bullock's relationship with Batman kind of evolves throughout the series.
All charges now that Killer Croc Morgan has been arrested.
I just want all the scum buckets and dirtbags in this town to know they settling law. Because Bullock's back and ready to kick butt.
And Batman smiles. He loves that. So we had Kevin Conroy as Batman, Robert Costanzo as Detective Bullock. He gets billing over Commissioner Gordon this time. I don't know if that's just alphabetical order or if it's because he had a bigger part in this episode. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. as Alfred, Mary Duvon as Summer Gleason, Aaron Kincaid as Killer Croc, Ingrid Oliu as Renee Montoya, and John Vernon as Rupert Thorne. So no new people that we notice in the cast other than Killer Croc himself. It is interesting that he is allowed to be named Killer Croc when oftentimes the broadcast standards and practices for children's television can be a little stringent when it comes to words like kill or death or die or it's an infamous joke about that on the Spider-Man animated series, how they would usually say destroy instead of die, and they weren't even allowed to call the Sinister Six the Sinister Six. They had to be called the Insidious Six because they thought that sinister was too rough of a word for children to handle. But Insidious is fine. Sinister, not so much. But on Batman the Animated Series, they're like, just look, the character's name is Killer Croc. What do you want us to do here? So, but let me take a few minutes while we're at the ending credits and talk a little bit more about Bullock, because one of the things I like about this episode is it is a fairly Bullock-centric episode. We get to see a lot of him, and he's one of my favorite supporting characters on this show. I would say outside of obviously Alfred and Commissioner Gordon and various Bat family members, Robin, Batgirl, etc. Bullock's probably my favorite supporting character. I like him an awful lot. And one of the things I like about him, particularly through the course of this series, is the evolution of his relationship with Batman. And we're kind of starting to see a little bit of it here. Like they're not exactly on friendly terms yet, but you can start to see the beginnings of sort of a mutual respect between the two, and eventually they do become kind of staunch allies. So that's pretty cool. I like that. It's nice to have a little bit of character evolution as far as the series goes. That's pretty neat. I like that. It's pretty similar to, though not identical to, what I was talking about with Bullock's art in the actual comic book. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I remember really enjoying it when I first watched it, and I think I enjoyed it even more when I was watching it this time. So that's pretty much it for this episode. And our next episode, Prophecy of Doom. You know how I was talking about I've got Batman in my basement. That's another episode coming up. And how Bruce Timm said that he considered it to be the worst episode they'd ever done. And I said, I don't know about that. We'll see as we watch along. And maybe we'll find a worse episode than I've got Batman in my basement. I think Prophecy of Doom. Prophecy of Doom might be a contender. That might be the first lemon that we run across in this show. But I think we're still going to enjoy watching it. So make sure that you tune in if you want to catch these when they're live. And I wish they weren't at such random times, but it's just basically whenever I get around to it. I'm trying to do one of these a day. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the little bell down there, and that'll let you know whenever I do another one. So I'm going to do the whole series, and basically my plan is I went and I looked it up, I researched it, and I figured out exactly where the movie Batman Mask of the Phantasm fits in as far as air date order, and it's going to be right after the episode Paging the Crime Doctor. That episode aired in September of '93, and it was the last new episode for a while. And in between there, what came out in the theaters was Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So that's where I'm going to slot that in. And then, of course, Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero is another animated movie. Bye, Aunt June. That's another animated movie, and that will fit in between the last episode of Adventures of Batman and Robin, the first rebranding of the show, and the second rebranding of the show, the new Batman Adventures. Sub-Zero will fit right in between there. Now, I do believe that in terms of air date order, that actually came out during the new Batman Adventures because it got delayed. But the intention was originally it was going to come out in between the two shows and be a bridge. So I'm going to follow the original intent as far as Sub-Zero goes. And we'll watch the last episode of Adventures of Batman and Robin, then Sub-Zero, and then the first episode of the new Batman Adventures. So that's how I'm going to do that in terms of air date order. After that, who knows? I'm not sure what show I'm going to watch next. It could be Superman the Animated Series, or it could be one of the other Batman animated series, like maybe Batman Beyond or The Batman, not to be confused with the Robert Pattinson movie, the cartoon called The Batman. Or I might watch The Brave and the Bold or something like that. But I kind of figure what would work best, what would flow most naturally, is to go ahead and watch Superman the Animated Series and then watch Justice League. I think that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, thanks for watching. We will talk to you next time. Bye.